Hello, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Elephant in the Room. A very sunny Wednesday evening to all. How is everybody?
It's actually quite overcast here in this part of the world. So I'm glad it's sunny where you are because it's really overcast here. And that's the Malaysian weather for you. But notwithstanding that, what an amazing program we have in store for us today. And just allow me very quickly to recap to where we are right now. Muihan, I think the
Yep.
first thing is the fact that we are talking about the reality. The first thing we're talking about here is what does the reality look like? It's not new. It's not the new normal. It's not, whatever that is supposed to be new. This is it. And I allude to a lot of the discussions that we've had for the last maybe 2 weeks or so. What does the current situation look like and how should we respond? There's been a very good run up from last week. We've been approaching this in this regard, and today the discussion is around the whole area of applications for jobs. Applications, whether it be my new graduates coming out or by people who are moving between jobs for whatever reason, or individuals who have, God forbid, been retrenched or are in the process of being retrenched. So one thing comes out very emphatically, and this was what we were discussing with Sharin Azmi a long time back. We need to make sure that we get our CV out to as many people as we can, to as many recruiters as we can. Then the question comes in, what should the CV look like? And Kevin Yong, the principal of Optimus Consulting, about a week or so ago, offered his professional advice, personal tips about how should CV writing look like, what should be the format, what would be some of the things that we should and we should not have on the CV. So today the focus is to understand what is required by a recruiter, and nothing like an 18-year veteran in the field to provide us with that feedback. But more importantly, the second part of it, Muihan, back to you. How are we going to link the second part in this regard?
So, since it's a special show and it's a countdown to our finale of season one, we have two guests, but not one, as our usual show will do. And of course, we have the proud delight to welcome back Ranukka Singham, who is a personal brand and image consultant. And the last time when we had her on the show, she gave very, very succinct, professional tips to managers, especially managing the virtual presence. So I think I better look at the camera, yeah, based on what she has taught us. So we're going to get her back this show after Kevin has shared the tips on what CV should look like, what the do's and don'ts. We were thinking to also get Ranukka to give her perspective or her advice to fellow job seekers, be it fresh graduates or also experienced hire, on how to really prepare for an interview. And these days, interviews are a little tricky because it is not only just face-to-face, it could be a virtual interview. And also, we have another perspective that Ranukka bringing onto the table, that is there going to be a different format where, there's a few of you getting interviewed at the same time, or you are getting interviewed with few people online, how do you manage that? So it's one to many and many to one in the guest, in that kind of context. So that's where we want to do the next part of the show together with Ranukka. Taranjeet?
Excellent. So let's have both Renuka and Kevin come on board. At least we welcome them into Elephant in the Room. And here we
Hi.
have, welcome Renuka, welcome.
Hi. It's good to be back again.
And we were thinking about having you sometime back, and Bob's your uncle. The opportunity has availed itself, and there you go. You're now back with us in Elephant in the Room.
Yeah.
I must say, you've been giving some very good tips on your own profile on LinkedIn about what are some of the
Thank you
things.
so
So
much.
kudos to you. Well done, Ranukka.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Well done. Whilst we're waiting for Kevin, just share with us a little bit about what prompted you to provide these tips at this point in time, Ranukka.
Right. Well, I think most importantly, what I saw in this past 3 months that we were at home was that it wasn't really my intention to get business out of it, to be honest. But I just felt that, I had a tug in my heart to really just share as much as what I knew so that I was able to help people who were, retrenched or lost their jobs in the middle of, this entire pandemic crisis. And hopefully that whatever they saw in my LinkedIn platform, the content that I provided was able to help them understand, some of the gaps that they didn't even realize that they had. So that was really the intention of what prompted me to be so active and share so many content on a day-to-day basis. And I'm really glad that it helped because there were many people who PM'd me personally and shared how much it has impacted them. And yeah, I think that itself was really very gratifying. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And keep on, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit. So we're going to say bye for now, and we're going to focus on
All
Kevin.
right.
Don't go anywhere. See you in a bit.
Sure. All the best, Kevin.
See you later.
So Kevin now is on an interview. So Kevin, welcome, Kevin.
Hey, thanks for being
No worries. It's our pleasure. And I think this is it resulted from your very kind offer, and we really thank you to actually provide a casting glance about how CVs are written and CVs are. So perhaps Muihan, if I may pass on the lead to you, let's talk about how many CVs had come in and what have you, and let me pass the lead on to you.
Okay, so when we concluded the show with Kevin the last time around, we actually put out an application, not really an application, but a link for our viewers to actually drop their CV and who want to actually get their CV reviewed by Kevin to be done on this show. So since then, we have actually received 5 CVs, to be honest, but we have closed it also within that few days, just because thinking if we take too many, we couldn't run on this show. But of the 5 individuals, 2 are uncontactable at the time of this show. So we have so we had we have to do 3. I mean, we have 3 CVs to be undertaken. So what we're thinking to do is maybe to get Kevin to share tips generically what he observed in these few CVs, as well as also share his experience looking at so many thousand CVs. I'm sure you have looked at thousands before. And also to tell our audience the do and don'ts, okay? Maybe just a quick note to both of you, gentlemen. What I've done here, I have private messaged many of my young undergraduates to come onto today's show. And also our friends at Talent Corp have been so kind to blast out to their 2,000 subscribers in their Telegram channel of the show today. So you can see there are many more young people coming on today, and as well as trying to get the good tips from you. So yeah, that's the
very good.
Looking forward to
very
it.
good. Kevin, over to you.
Okay, so Muihan, are we okay?
You want the slides?
Yeah. Well, it's
Okay, right. Let me just quickly pull that out.
Okay. Well, an overview. As what Muihan have mentioned the last time. I've seen thousands of CV over the last 17, 18 years now, and nothing much have changed in terms of the process. Like I say, a CV is a CV. It is not something that will immediately get you the job. It is a door opener. I've always mentioned this. This is your small opportunity, your window of opportunity to actually get someone interested to know more about yourself. So coming back to writing a good CV, to be honest, there's no one proper format or template. that you should follow. If you just Google, if you just go and search, there are thousands and thousands of CV samples and formats available for you to choose. As long as you follow some key do's and don'ts that we will share later, you'll be fine. So don't be too concerned about, making sure that you stick to one particular format. It is not necessary. The more important thing that you should focus on is trying to understand, put yourself in the employee's shoe, the interviewer's shoe. What are they looking for? What do they need to see from your CV? So the proper, clear flow of information is very, very critical. You don't want to have your work experience at the top. You don't want to have your personal details on the sides. It's just going to be very difficult for them to focus on your CV. You just want to capture their attention the moment they look at your CV. And I'll be sharing a bit about the role of the ATS and why you shouldn't be spending too much time on the aesthetics of your CVs. It's more critical for you to focus on the substance, and we'll share that with you shortly as well. So in terms of your CV, clients, right, employers and recruiters like us, we receive CVs on a daily basis. You can imagine the sheer amount of CVs that our clients have to process. They would have no time to go through each and individual CV to identify the right candidate. If they find someone with some key critical factors that they are looking for, they immediately put it aside. That is a tray of candidates that I would potentially want to meet up or call for an interview. So if you have a generic CV that you are blasting out, and expecting a call back without putting any thoughts into the preparation, I'm sure you're going to be disappointed more often than none. More often than getting callbacks. So my advice to you is, have a look back at your CV. Make sure you are extremely happy. If you are not happy with the content, get a third-party feedback. Have them to go through your CV. Go and have a look and see whether it is up to your expectation, especially the flow. So moving to the next part in terms of the challenge of articulating your experience into a CV. Over the years, we have seen also even senior candidates, senior executives having so much issues articulating their experience into a proper CV format. And that's where we were able, we are happy to be able to assist them in putting up a proper CV. Assisting them with, providing enough information to the potential employers with regards to their experience. What needs to go in, what needs to be out. We don't need colors. We don't need borders. We don't really need, fancy stuff onto your CV. We don't need pictures to highlight your experience. Just focus on your substance. Just focus on the experience. So
this is exciting and very succinct. Allow me to take it one step further, Kevin. We have an opportunity here to see hundreds of CVs coming into the mailbox. And to be fair, you are only one, as you have highlighted there, one of hundreds of people. How long should the CV be? And I've had instances, and we were just sharing this just now, photographs, how should the photographs look like? Should I even have a photograph on there? What type of, should I have a passport-like photo? Am I, a black and white, grayscale? What's the deal there? What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
Okay, a proper CV is just an introduction. It's a professional introduction of yourself. It's representing you in the process of applying for a job. If you have a photo, make sure your photo eludes enough energy about yourself. You don't want to have a photo that that shows so much negativity about yourself. Your sleepy face, your fringe hanging around, not properly attired. Depending on the role that you're applying, you really need to at least put some effort into coming up with a proper profile photo, and we'll share that.
And simply because that photo is what you will be putting to the employer.
Correct.
And if that photo does not look energizing, you know what? Chances are I'll put that aside. Would that be a fair comment?
Yes, it is. It will be so unfair if you have spent so many years, building your career profile. And when you apply for a job, you've just been disregarded based on the photo that you have submitted. And it's just really sad. And I've seen so many cases like that. And these are how, we advise them to make sure if you're going to put a photo, don't put your family shot there. Come on.
You're not well. The other one that I see very frequently is the immigration-like passport photo.
Yeah, man.
What's that about? You're not applying for an immigration visa.
Come on.
Tell me.
Yeah, it's very convenient for you, right? If you need a photo, what best source than to find a passport photo lying around and scan it and fix it in?
Absolutely.
So that's an easy way out.
Can I actually ask the audience, because this is a critical point that you have, the audience, to ask questions to an expert like Kevin. Ask an expert question in this regard. Get the questions out. You have an opportunity to ask him. Let's come up with that. Kevin, let's move on to the next page of that slide.
Okay. Yep. So the last session I had with you, we covered a bit about the ATS system, right?
Yes,
and coincidentally, there were so many parties asking more information about it. Both from your side and from my side. And I thought perhaps we should share a bit about what the ATS is all about in detail. So at least future applicants will have a clearer picture of what the system is all about. So ATS is a software that enables electronic handling of recruitment and hiring needs. And I was just reading about it. 90% of the Fortune 500 companies are using it. And it's now so prevalent. It is now so common. It is now being used even for smaller companies, let alone the job boards and LinkedIn and all. So essentially, it is a system that is looking into your CV to look out for keywords that have been preset by the hiring managers to look out for. So the hiring manager, for instance, is looking for a finance person. And obviously, some of the keywords like treasury work, corporate finance, banking, those are the keywords that they look out for. And if your CV do not contain such words, you are automatically disregarded, even at a filtering stage. So it also ranks your CV according to the job requirement. So the more keywords you have that suits the requirement, the higher your rank and the higher chance of you getting selected for the interview. Not the job, but just the interview. It is also a tool used as centralized and centralized and to categorize CVs for future recruitment according to keyword searches. So internally, some of our clients, they have got an ATS system on board. So you can imagine when they put out a vacancy, advertisement, imagine the hundreds and thousands of applicants into the system. And in order to save manpower, what they have done is to use the ATS system to quickly filter out, as mentioned, some of the keywords that they are looking for. So if you do not spend time putting effort into preparing your CV, chances are, it might not be suitable, and you won't be selected.
Okay, thank you for that. Kevin, just a quick one. Wanted to be cognizant of time. As
Okay.
well as we forgot to announce, because it's a special, we are going to be extending this show all the way up to 6:45. So please bear with us, because we have a lot to share for both of our experts, and we're only starting with the first one. Okay, so maybe quickly, if you can walk us through the next do and don'ts before we go on to Ranukka.
Okay. Okay. So some of the do's that that over the years we have seen include, very importantly, is to include your personal details, your email and your contact number. The last thing you want to do is someone unable to contact you for an interview. That is just going to be disastrous. You go through the whole system, and when people want to meet up with you, they couldn't get up. They couldn't contact you. CVs should be 2 to 3 pages maximum. 2 pages ideal. 3 pages, if you are a professional with a lot of experience, you want to fill it in. Make sure it is of value. If it's not of value, don't include your high school achievements. That is, it's just going to take up real estate space in your CV. So make sure it's just 2-3 pages. That's fine. Focus on and quantify your achievements in each role rather than your functional responsibility. What I meant by that is you can line up 10 GMs, right? 10 sales GMs, right? And we know what their roles are supposed to do. They, all 10 of them are supposed to do the same thing, but individually they have achieved different stuff over their period of professional life. So that is what setting yourself apart is. If you're gonna just conveniently plug your job description and plonk it into your JD, it's just going to be a major turnoff for employers. Then seek an expert opinion. Like I mentioned, have someone look at your CV. Ask them to proofread it. Make sure your grammar, your vocabulary use is good, and importantly is if the third party is able to give you ideas to beef up your CV, that would be fantastic. Use that, get a HR manager or your friend who is involved in recruitment. Ask them for assistance. I'm sure they'll be more than happy. And the ATS system, as we just mentioned just now.
Okay, quick one. Kevin, we got a few questions coming in, and I thought maybe I'm going to quickly just get you to respond. So the first question is from Nishan. Nishan asks, what would be a length of a CV for 7 years of work experience for an ex-professional?
Hey, 7 years, 10 years, I stick to the 2 to 3 pages. That's more than enough for you to give a snapshot of who you are. Anything more than that, unless you are a professional with 30 years of experience with extensive, achievement records, stick to the 2 to 3 pages. That will decide, whether you get past the interview stage or not, or the filtering stage or not.
Okay, cool. Next question is from Iwani. So he asked, is there any difference between objectives and career goals?
I don't get it. May I know any different in regards to objectives and career? Oh, okay. Objectives are, I think if you look at it, right, objectives are in terms of what you plan to do on a short term, and your career goals, if you look at it, in the long run, what do you plan? How do you see yourself, becoming in the next 5 to 10 years? So that is something that I would think you should use as a guideline. Okay,
cool. So I think let's move on. We have a few more questions. I think we're going to talk about the don'ts, which I think is very critical.
Okay. So make sure. Okay, the don'ts. Okay, there you are. Okay. Don't use too many lines and columns. The ATS system is not going to recognize and give you credit for lines and columns and beautification of your CV. So avoid that. Just go straight to the point. As do not include too much information. At your CV stage, you don't have to include your CV, your home address, and also your reason for resignation in your previous roles. Avoid putting that in. So you don't need to, share too much information about your previous roles unless you are called for the interview. Your email address. I've seen funny email address, mates. I tell you. so that is one thing. Please stay away. I think Ranukka will probably be able to share a bit later.
cutegirl.com or something like that. Oh my God. Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah, I've seen that too. Amazing. I can't believe people are still doing that, and we are applying for a professional role.
It's easy. A lot of these graduates use these emails when they are in college and school, right? So they forget that, subsequently they move on, they continue to use that email address. So first things out, you change your email. In your achievements, we have seen a lot of I's. I did this, I did that, I created, a platform, I sold this, I created these new accounts for my client or for my employers. So you totally eliminated your team player factor. And that is not viewed lightly by future employers. Keep your referee list. You're just taking up space. The referees is important, but you don't need to put everything in there now. They will ask you for it eventually, and it is a common thing now to have proper referees who are not your friends, who are not your colleagues. It's more your ex-superiors. So be aware of that. And you don't burn bridge even when you resign for whatever reason, because you never know when you might need their assistance. So your high school roles, come on. I've seen people listing their high school achievements, even though they have got about 15, 20 years of work experience. So that is really taking up space. It is unnecessary. Lie and omit information. There are so many cases and experiences I can share with you, and I've experienced it so many times at first hand, how candidates have been caught, omitting information, and that will eventually come back to you.
It'll come out. Yep, and to be fair, let me share my thoughts here very quickly, because we are cognizant of time. It's not only just the CV, because if you go down to the next level, I'm doing a cross-reference against LinkedIn. I'm doing a cross-reference against Facebook. I'm doing a cross-reference against Instagram. Now, what is going to be very interesting, and we've seen this time and time again, here you have it on the CV that you are, you're dedicated and blah, blah, blah. And there you are in a Facebook picture with all your mates, and you are, in a very compromising situation. It becomes very awkward, and we don't realize it. This is public. It is public domain, and you cannot stop these photographs or these, these events from going out. So, and I think this is very pertinent, especially for those of us who live our life on social media. What we eat and what we drink and the people that we go out with, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and guess where I am, and we see this all the time. And then you are applying for a job as a risk manager. Well, hang on, what's the deal here, if you know what I mean, Kevin?
I mean, that is a very good point. With the influx of social media use, right? And we have seen it. Clients are actually using software to pick up, your social media activities as a complement to your CV application. And that is probably another topic that, Muihai and Taranjeet can moderate next time. But just be very careful and mindful of what you post, be it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. Because once it's out there, sometimes you wish you never posted such thing.
Too late. Now let me stop you there, Kevin. And we've got Ranukka waiting in the wings. Okay. So just to recap, we need to make sure that we have the right things written. We need to make sure that we be very careful about what we don't want to be on the CV. The whole objectives and the career aspiration has to be very clearly laid out, and keep it succinct. It's about the substance and not the form in this regard. So all these nice, curly fonts and all that, forget it. We don't need all of that, right? Because we just want to enter into the door. That's what we want to do, and which is what we see will do. Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to put you on the side. Let's bring Ranukka up. So it's really interesting. And I love the discussion that we are having here. Ranukka, I will pass you on to Muihan. Muihan, back to you, buddy.
Sure, like that was really good though. I learned a lot.
So maybe quickly, maybe Ranukka, maybe you can help our audience to look at the perspective of preparing for an interview, as well as during the interview. I think the two portions are very critical, especially where you can play a role.
Right. So, okay, you had a really great CV and you were called in for an interview, right? Congratulations. So right now you have to think about few aspects of it, because at the current situation, there is really more supply than demand. So a lot of employees and organizations are looking into group interviews. So I think the first thing that you really want to establish here, right, is whether number one, is it a one-to-one interview or it's a group interview, or number two, is it a physical interview? Are you meeting them face to face, or is it going to be virtual? And how you're going to actually understand all these things, right, is of course researching it out, calling the HR manager or the person who contacted you about this interview and really ask these questions. Because I have realized many times, surprisingly, when I speak to some fresh grads, that they come back and tell me things like, oh man, I didn't know it was a group interview. And in my heart, I'll be like, how could you not know? I mean, like it would have already been told if you only asked, right? So I think I want to split my tips here into two things. One is pre-interview. What are some things you need to really look into? And during the interview, maybe some tips that I want to also share. So the first thing I want to look in is before the interview, of course, like I mentioned just now, research, right? Researching out exactly what company you're going for, who is going to be interviewing you. I think, don't tell me you can't do that. You can always stalk this person on LinkedIn, example, right? The company that you're actually going for the interview. And most importantly, right, the surprising thing that I always hear candidates not looking into is the job description. Really understand what job exactly that you're going for is so important, and not going in and waiting for the interviewer to explain to you, because that really shows the interviewer a sense of entitlement. Like if I have to tell you exactly what it is, I mean, that's really just not right. All right. So the first thing is research. And second thing is really right now, right, knowing what the job is, knowing the culture, knowing the company, knowing the hiring manager that's going to be interviewing you. The next thing you want to think about is the impression that you want to create here. When you go into this interview, right, it's important to look professional, no doubt, right? But it's also really important to inject your personality and what you really are about to kind of differentiate you from the other candidates. Because don't forget, it's not just you that's going to be going for this interview. There's 10 other people going for it, right? So whether it's a one-to-one interview or whether it's a group, you have to really think about the impression that you really want to create and what you want people to feel when they see you for the first time. And speaking of group interviews, that's even more important, because take this, at one shot, it's a 1:5 ratio where one interviewer is looking at 5 people. How do you stand out in a very subtle yet professional yet classy way, right? And those are some things that you really need to think about. And the third thing before an interview that you really have to look into is really practice. So just now, before we started this live show, Kevin did point out a very good point, which is role playing. We need to say before, I guess maybe few days even before the interview is starting, really look into some frequently asked questions that most interviewers would ask you, like, tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself? What's your biggest achievement? Things like that, right? And role play it out with maybe your friend or family, so that you get familiarized into the sequence of how you can say things. But not just the FAQs that you need to role play, also visualizing how you want to look during that day of the interview is really important to prepare beforehand. Let's say you have your interview at 11 a.m. Tomorrow morning. You can't be deciding what to wear, how to look or even in only in the morning, because remember, it's an interview, you're flustered, you're nervous, right? So a lot of these factors need to be pre-planned, especially for women. Let's say you want to go for an interview, you want to wear makeup, but you're not very familiar with it. Oh my God, you have to really practice it maybe like few days before, right? And not just scramble on that very day itself. I think those 3 important aspects that I shared for you to do before an interview is so important, and it would make such a big difference. So recapping it, number 1 is researching every aspect. Yeah. So I think for me, previously when I was hiring, the more questions before the interview that the candidate asked me, the more impressed I am actually, because I feel like, wow, so eager, so determined to really get the job that he's asking me so much, right? So that's 1, researching. Number 2, really understanding what kind of impression do you want to really go in with, right? You want to look more approachable, you want to look more professional, you want to look sharp, whatever it is, it's really important. So, and inject your personality in it. And number 3, really practice and visualize how it would be when you're there on that very day itself. Those 3 things are so important. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think, Ranukka, this is brilliant, because the nice follow through from getting the right CV and actually
Yes.
making an opportunity to go before the interviewer, whether
Right.
it be casting like this or
Yeah.
whether it be a face-to-face, is absolutely critical. Now we've
Right.
got the pre-work done. What
Yes.
about during the interview itself? What should the interviewee be thinking about?
Okay, so I think I'm going to split it into 2 parts here during the interview. Let's talk about the most common one that you see nowadays, right? Which is virtual, right? I think even though it's more relaxed first at the moment, I still do hear some of my friends who are hiring preferring to do it virtually, simply because it saves time. Again, don't forget, supply is more than demand right now. Time is crucial, right? So because of time, because of safety and all that factors, virtual seems to be the most common thing right now. I think for candidates, you also have to remember, even though you're virtually here, you have to really react and treat this whole thing as if you're meeting this person face to face. I think the most important courtesy is being even in front, in the call itself 10 minutes before it starts, right? It's so important. I've seen myself personally, like even some video calls that I've been in, we say 10, our friend comes in at 10. Not right. I mean, you should be there maybe even 10 minutes before the session starts. That's number 1. Number 2, we always say, right, in terms of in an interview session, one of the most common things that a lot of hiring managers point out is body language, right? The lack of eye contact, the fidgeting and all that. Same thing here when you're doing it virtually. So going back into the points that I made in the previous session that I was in, we spoke about eye contact, whereby when you're talking to the interviewer, it's always important for you to look at the camera instead of looking down the screen and making sure how you look and whatnot, right? So look at the camera while you're talking to the interviewer, and make sure, right, when the interviewer is asking you questions, for you to have body language, some gestures to show that you're really listening, nodding your head or yeah, and not like muting yourself while the whole thing is happening. Yeah, because like example, I've seen 1 or 2, right? While I'm speaking, he is muted, and when he wants to answer, he unmutes himself. You see, and that really comes into that 1.2 seconds we spoke about, right? Where when there's a gap there is a level of break in the rapport. There's an awkwardness, there's no connection, no chemistry that we can build in. So always have that connection of like, yeah, I see.
Good point.
Of course,
Good point.
be a bit more natural about it. I think practice makes perfect, right? So that's really important. Second thing I want to also talk about, second thing is really about the attire. Now, regardless of what people might say about professional dressing, again, there's no one form fit all. And this is where, right, research and investigation comes into play. You have to really understand, right, what exactly is the industry that you're going for? How do they usually dress? When they say professional dressing, what is their definition of professional dressing? Have all of this in mind so that what you dress up in can really be in congruency with the company that you're actually going for the interview. Because what I realized is that sometimes for fresh grads especially, they dress as per what their understanding of professional dressing is, and sometimes it can be an underdress or overdress. And you will catch some interviewers saying that, oh wow, Okay, you look really dressed up, right? And then it kind of shows that, hey, you didn't do your homework, right? You don't even know that actually we practice business casual, example. So all of these things are really, really important to really take note on your attire, making sure that, your entire look, paying attention to the fact that in a virtual call, you are just half a frame. So whatever you're wearing here, your earrings for women, your hairstyle, all this would be magnified because it's just a half frame that you're seeing. So remember the points that I mentioned before: contrast, your background and your attire, make sure it's high contrast so that you look more memorable, you look more fresh, more energized. Those things really come into play. And of course, the cutting of your attire, make sure that it is not, overly loose. We're not going for fashion here, guys. We're looking for clean, polished, and neat. Yeah. So all these things are very important. So the second point for me is attire. And the third thing is, of course, minimizing distraction and increasing attention. So when we talk about background, make sure you're in a background which is static. I know that some people right now, use virtual backgrounds. Again, really make sure the quality of a virtual background is really great, because you don't want to be like, disappearing and appearing again. You know what I mean? Yeah, and that is so distracting. So making sure that all of these things are set in place, your eye level, the lighting, so that whenever you answer a question, the interviewer is not distracted by everything else that's happening around you, but really paying so much attention to what you're saying. Yeah,
Very
so
good. Very
these
good.
three things are really important for me.
So this is
Cool.
this is great, and I like how the discussion is progressing, and we are now coming into the last couple of minutes. Mui Han, we have got some good questions. See how fast time is
I
flying.
know, it's always like that.
With
It
us,
always
only
flies.
with us, I hope. Only with us,
Yeah.
because you're having such a great time. Yeah. Mui Han, back to you, buddy.
Okay, we got a few questions, and I think some of them are for Kevin, and also I think Ranukka, you can also give your perspective. There's one particular for you. Maybe I'll set on with the first one from Aina Mastura. So she asked, so should you include related courses in your CV, and what does it mean by quantifying your achievements? If you can give your thoughts, Kevin, quickly on that.
Yeah, of course, if you have got qualification that suits the job that you're applying for, by all means you should include it. Second, what do you mean by quantify your achievement? So if, let's say, you increase sales by 10%, or you have reduced cost by 15% by implementing such safe costing measures, or you have increased productivity by 2%. That is what I meant by quantifying, and numbers speak louder than essay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Cool. Next one, quick one. Azam asked whether 1-2 page for fresh graduate is fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I think fresh graduate is just one pager. There's nothing much.
There's nothing to talk about.
There's nothing much. But very quickly, right? If you are a fresh graduate, in terms of experience, I would suggest you look for part-time jobs. If you have got nothing, at least your part-time job will show your interaction and social interaction skills. The least that will come out from your CV is you are able to work in a team, or you are able to interact socially.
And the ability and the ability to talk about problem solving, depending on the job that you're in.
Correct.
So yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. Good point. Weihan?
This one is for you, Ranukka. Aina asks, what does personal branding really means, and how should you portray that during an interview? Yeah.
I think that's a very good question. So a lot of people kind of ask me this on a time to time. What really does branding mean, right? Is it really about how you look? I think the fact that there's branding in there means, right, you have to now kind of inject your own personality into what you wear. I think that's really what personal branding is, because and each hiring manager sees many candidates every day, and what more right now when it's virtually, right, back to back, we can see so many at one go. So who stands out for me, right, is probably the one that not just looks smart, polished, neat, but really I can see that there is a certain element of characteristics in terms of how they wear. I think that really kind of differentiates you from other people. So I think for whether it's fresh grads or job seekers, maybe at this point, right, you also want to take some time to reflect, right, who are you, right? Like, what do you really represent in this sense? What do you want to be known as, right?
Yeah.
And just maybe list down 3 adjectives. I think that's good enough. Like, like for me, I like to always be seen as someone who's approachable. So like the way I dress, how I smile, all these little things, right, kind of build the motion of like, she looks approachable. You get what I mean? So I think it's really important for individuals to really have that, because again, you don't want to be like a mole, like you don't want to be the same as other people. You don't want to not stand out. Yeah.
Great. Okay, this one is an interesting one from my good friend Ben. So Ben asks, is cross-checking a candidate's CV and profile with their Facebook page an ethical action?
Wow. This is a gray area. I think there's no clear rule just yet. As far as as far as I know, so it's a very clear area. But if you are posting, it's on public status, right? What is stopping anyone from looking at what you're posting? I think at the end of the day, if employers were to scan through, right, it is more to catch certain key, if you are politically charged, or if you are if you are racist, if or if you've got a sense of if
biasness.
I mean, those are things that they are probably looking out for, rather than your beer sessions. I mean, that wouldn't really influence whether you get a job or not.
Yeah,
I agree, and I think, just to add on to that, Kevin, I think it's also, and this is from my own experience, it's a bigger picture context that we're looking at.
Correct.
It's not about specific. Now, if there is a consistent message that is coming out in every 3 posts, you know what? It looks pretty reflective that is who you are.
Correct.
And it's not that one-off picture, but it's a little bit more. So it is actually a double-edged sword. As I go out there into this media profiling, and with regards to me wanting to share my innermost, but you know what? It could actually be viewed against me for whatever reason. Renuka, you were going to say something.
No, I just wanted to share with everyone. Maybe the best tip right now is to Google yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Google yourself and see what exactly you see in the image, and also maybe even in all. Because sometimes you are so actively trying to hide things on your Facebook, but who knows, you wrote something in your blog like 10 years ago. It came out, So Google yourself,
one more thing. I think you shouldn't be too. I think the question asker, you shouldn't be too concerned about the Facebook part, your social media part. What is more interesting is your reference, your referees. That will probably have a bigger influence with regards to whether you get a job or not. And I've stick to that for the last 17, 18 years. I've always insisted on at least 2 referees from the candidate. They have to either be their bosses or ex-superiors. No friends, no family, no relatives.
Right.
Agreed. Very well done. Muihan, any last questions?
We have still some, but I think I wanted to close the session already because we are running super late on time. Maybe what I'm having you to do is to quickly just run through the 3 CVs. Don't spend too much time, but I think it's already on bulletin form. I will email the applicants individually as well based on what you have written. Okay, so I want just quickly just to do that before we close the show. Since we already committed to do that, right? So sorry.
Okay, Nishan.
So I think the first one is from Nishan, right?
Well, very nicely done. I must say, it is exact. I mean, to me, I've got enough information about himself. What he has done. Coming back to the question, how do you quantify? If you look at the CV, you'll be able to see, that he has included numbers in terms of what he has achieved. So that is very good. It's a 1-pager, very pleasing to the eye, easy. I'll definitely call him if I've got position. Okay, Jafran. So Jafran looks good. It looks professionally done. I would suggest him using a more positive profile picture.
Agree.
I
Agree.
think Jafar would agree.
Yeah.
He has to elude more positivity. Otherwise it's just going to
I
be
think it's a posture.
It's a posture, and
Yeah.
his facial, he
Smile with
smile a
teeth.
bit, smile a bit,
Yeah.
smile a bit. Okay, so remove the full referee list, only required later, and quantify your achievements. If you look at the CV, there's nothing much to show what he has done, in terms of his previous experiences. Okay, Andrew. Andrew has got solid experience. Unfortunately, you have to scramble. You have to start, looking for, pointers, and that takes time. And it is a bit frustrating in the sense the fonts is a bit too small. If I'm not mistaken, is on 9. He should consider using bullet form. Highlight. I think these are all small cosmetic changes, like highlighting the previous employment, just to highlight it. So if you look at his work experience, right, it is very similar to a job description. So it doesn't say much about what he has achieved. So clients will most likely, push this aside very quickly. And his profile picture, it can be better, definitely much better. It has to be more professionally done. Take a professional shot. And the bottom part, it looks like, he lost focus for a while when he was talking about his achievements and CRM system use.
Very good.
Okay.
Good.
Thank
Good
you so much. One last question to wrap everything up, and I think it's just nice. As this fresh graduate asking, Thor here asked, so if a fresh graduate, I don't have much achievements, what do I write then? Your thoughts quickly.
Okay. So that for fresh graduate, I've always asked them to seek part-time job. At least fill it up with something. Get some work experience. The least you do is to portray that you actually have some work experience. So a lot of people ask me, hey, I'm a fresh graduate, right? So what work experience have I got? What should I include? Include those part-time jobs. Jobs that you do casually. You get paid. As a one to share samples, for example. That can be included. If you really don't have, well, I guess you just have to include basic stuff. Your school achievements.
Let me respond to that. Today, you're already seeing graduates as they're graduating, coming out to the table with job experiences in internships from year 2.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a 4-year program. On year 2, I'm already getting a 2-month summer internship or mid-year internship or whatever the deal is. And that's what this is about. Rather than sitting down there and messing around with my PS4, because you know what, I'm just relaxing for the next couple of weeks. So I'm being facetious, but I'm trying to put a point across. And the point here is you need to have it in you, because nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
You have to do it you have to take this initiative. Muihan, back to you, my friend.
Yeah, quick one. So I noticed you're both right, but this is the too late case because they are graduating next month. So you cannot ask me to go back 2 years, do a part-time job or do an internship. So my promise is this. I think one key thing as fresh graduates, all employers are not looking for detailed or very technical functional skills. What they're trying to look for is culture fit into their organization, and those are behavioral competencies. How do we as interviewer look for behavioral competencies? We look at your participation in extra curriculum activities. So if you can give more substance to that, that will able to demonstrate the kind of competencies that you may have that somehow will predict whether you fit or don't fit our organizations. So if you have not done all the part-timer and internship, don't worry. Still got a recourse to that, but just focus more on that, right? So I think we have finished all the time. Oh, we have super extended. So sorry to all the audience. Wow. This is such a great show, and I think we have so much to share with. Just wanted to close this quickly. Tomorrow we are having another special, and this time we are bringing two of our ex-guests, Mr. Zorab Chong and of course Vertika Kohli from India. But we are throwing in another guest speaker. Here is Mr. Shasmin Ali, which is the Country HR Director of Shell Malaysia. So three of them will be joining us tomorrow for another Power Pack session, going to be another extended special to really talk about the state of talent management, what it is, how it's going to be like, and how are we going to move it differently in moving forward. So look forward to see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. for another special before we conclude the season. So with that, I will take my leave and say bye-bye to all. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you both
Bye.
and Ranukka to be back. All right? Bye.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.